The New York Giants wrap up 2 days of joint practices with the New England Patriots. Saquon Barkley gets some team drills. How did he look? How did the Giants look? All that coming up here on the LockedOn Giants podcast with special guest Mike DeBate of LockedOn Patriots.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, New York Giant fans, welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. My name is Patricia Traina, and I am joined today by Mike DeBate. He is back with me to wrap up the New York Giants and New England Patriots joint practices. We're going to talk about all the highlights from both sides of the teams. And we're going to get you caught up on everything. The Giants finished their joint practices in New England. They're headed back to East Rutherford for practice on Friday, which is when you're going to see this podcast or hear this podcast. And then, of course, the two teams will square up on Sunday in the preseason finale. So, Mike, welcome back, my friend, to the podcast. You look a lot cooler than you did yesterday. I know it was a hot day again today, but you look like you were able to cool down a little bit.
A little cooler and definitely a little less loud than it was yesterday. Some trucks and things going on in the background, but all in all, a solid 2 days of practice, I think, for both teams. Great to see these types of joint practice environments, both for the Patriots and the Giants. It was exciting to be a part of, and looking forward to the game on Sunday. Definitely some seedlings of things drop that we can definitely look for when these two teams take the field in East Rutherford.
Absolutely. Now let's kick this off. Now, from what I understand from the practices, the Giants looked a little bit better this week, or today, I should say, against the Patriots. I think there was one shaky offensive series where the Giant offensive line had some problems and whatnot. What did you see from the Giants offense versus the Patriots defense?
Yeah, I think they definitely looked a lot more comfortable. I think they looked a little bit better, maybe prepared. And I think they just had some of those joint practice, jitters kind of go away. The Giants did look a little bit more prepared and better equipped today. The Patriots did have some, defensive, plays against, the Giants offense that really, I think, stood out. Obviously, Josh Uche had a big day. Patriots linebacker, second-year linebacker out of Michigan. He really, I think, is taking strides and steps toward being a very productive member of this Patriots defense. He had 3 would-be sacks today out there on the field. He also drew a holding call and also held up very well in coverage against the Giants offensive line. So that was a good plus for the New England Patriots. On a positive note for the Giants offense, I thought Daniel Jones looked a lot more comfortable out there. I think the return of Saquon Barkley, which I'm sure we'll get to in a little bit, he looked very limber and he looked like a mismatch, regardless of who he's on. So he looked to be someone that I think Giants fans would definitely be glad to see back. He looks like he's about to come back in a big way. Daniel Jones, I thought, did a good job of reading some difficulties that the Patriots defense had. One particular play where J.C. Jackson, cornerback for the Patriots, and safety Adrian Phillips looked like there was a bit of busted coverage. I thought Daniel read it very well, found Dante Pettis for a big gain. It was the biggest gain that the Patriots have let up in the last 2 days. So all in all, a little bit more sharp, a little bit more crisp, and I think a little bit more comfortable for the Giants offense today.
Now, just to clarify, the struggles were the first team Giant offensive line, right? I think I had seen, was it the right side of the line that struggled, or just the whole line in general on that first series?
It was a little bit more on the right side than the whole line. I wouldn't necessarily say that the whole line struggled, but there were some difficult growing pains. And look, the Patriots defensive line on the opposite side of the ball had their issues as well. It was a very hot, very oppressive, not very breezy day out there in New England. So linemen tend to feel that a little bit more maybe than some of the positional players, but it was clear that everybody was feeling the effects. I think when the whistle sounded, and this practice being a little bit shorter than yesterday's, I think a lot of people were glad to be able to walk off the field.
Well, if we could stay on Daniel Jones for a moment, you mentioned he looked a lot more comfortable. what could you tell the Patriots were doing? Were they doing a lot of fancy stuff with disguising? Were they keeping it simple? Were they doing a lot of stunts up front? What were they doing to really test Daniel Jones back there?
Honestly, I think the Patriots were keeping it very basic. I think what they were trying to do is trying to take a look at what his strengths were, trying to take a look at what the Patriots do well to contain quarterbacks. And most of the looks that we were seeing were not very exotic. Bill Belichick is very close to the best on those things. He's not going to tip his hand in this type of an environment. Even Sunday night, I don't expect him to really go above and beyond in that case. So I think there's going to be probably a little bit feeling out process on Sunday. We may see a little bit more looks and things of that nature that might clue us in as to what Bill Belichick is going to do defensively and what he'd like to do to stop a quarterback like Daniel Jones during the regular season. But ultimately, I don't think it's going to be anything like the type of exotic looks that Bill is known to put out there against first year, second year, even third year quarterbacks to try to confuse them at the line of scrimmage and get them to make moves that they really shouldn't be making. Didn't see a whole lot of that today.
Giant fans, we have plenty more coming up on this edition of the Locked On Giants podcast. But first, Built Bar is a healthy, low-carb, low-sugar, and high-protein treat that will satisfy your sweet tooth. Choose from 9 amazing flavors plus the occasional limited-time offering available in nut and nut-free varieties. Visit BuiltBar.com and get 15% off your first order with the promo code LOCKED15, that's LOCKED 15 at BuiltBar.com for 15% off your first order. Now, we've got to talk about Saquon Barkley. Joe Judge, before practice, said that he was going to look to get Barkley into about a dozen or so 7-on-7, 11-on-11s combined. Barkley, obviously, in the red jersey, no contact, but he did get out there. I think the final count was 8, 4 each on 7-on-7 and 11-on-11. How did Barkley look to you?
Again, I thought he looked limber. I thought he looked like he was coming out of the box well. I thought he looked like he was breaking the line very well. This is a kid, don't forget, that's coming off of a very serious injury. And you always look for situations where he may look like he's lost a step, or he may look like he's going to have difficulty accelerating, or maybe making a sidestep or anything like that. I didn't see too many issues on him right now that would lead me to believe that he's going to be held back in any way. I look for him to come out ready. Obviously, there's going to be a period where he'll adjust back into game shape, and he's probably still a little bit away from that. And I think that's fair to Saquon at this point to give him that opportunity to kind of get back to where he needs to be. But what we saw from him out there today was encouraging. If I'm a Giants fan, I'm looking at it and saying this is a good opportunity for him to be able to build on that and gain, his health back. And once he does that, he'll continue to be one of the more productive, if not the most productive, running back in the NFL.
Yeah, definitely. And, interesting point here. I mean, Joe Judge spoke about ramping Saquon up and saying that at some point he wants to get him some pops, if you will, hits. And they're running out of time. I don't know what the plan is. I think when they come back to East Rutherford on Friday, I believe that's going to be a non-padded practice. So I'm not really sure when they're planning to get him some hits. I wonder if they're going to try and sneak him into the game on Sunday night. I mean, I know Judge hinted at that a few weeks ago, but that'll be interesting to see it. I'm sure a lot of Giant fans will be happy to see that. And, it depends on what Belichick's plan is as far as, who he's going to play on Sunday night. I don't know if he considers that his dress rehearsal or if he had his dress rehearsal. I mean, what can you tell us about that? Maybe that can give us a clue as to what we might expect with Barkley.
Well, judging by what I saw on the field today, it would not shock me to see him get a few snaps in this game. If they're looking to get him a little bit of contact and they're looking to get him game ready, there's no better opportunity to do that than in this game. And I think him having the opportunity to see some of the Patriots' defensive alignments, how they might stack up against him, is a good opportunity for him to be able to do that, but not risk any type of injury. So bottom line, you want to keep Saquon healthy. Obviously, his loss last year was a big loss for the Giants, and they don't want to end up going through anything like that again. Even if it's a temporary or minor setback, you don't want to jeopardize his health. And Joe Judge and the Giants coaching staff and the organization as a whole is smart enough to realize that. But at the same time, there's also something to be said about getting him back out there and getting him acclimated. So this could be a good opportunity. From what I saw today, again, I think it might be, a good bet to say we might see him a little bit out there on Sunday night.
Yeah, probably a series or two, especially, Judge knows the players on the Patriots. He knows Belichick. I think that is going to give him more of a comfort level to try and put Saquon out there. So that's something definitely I'm interested in seeing. Now, let's talk about the other side of the ball. I know Mac Jones yesterday had a tremendous day in practice. The Giants defense didn't look that great. What did you see today from Mac Jones versus that Giants defense?
Well, Jones was lauded for his performance, and I was as guilty of that, or rightfully so guilty of that as anybody else. Really talking him up with the performance that he had on the field on Wednesday. He deserved every bit of that. Took a bit step back down to earth, I think, a little bit today. But overall, I think Mac was still very solid in what he was able to do. He was the victim of a few catchable passes that were dropped on this day. A couple of real head scratchers when it came to the Patriots and their pass catchers. I definitely know that Bill Belichick and his coaching staff and guys like Troy Brown and Nick Lombardi, who work with the wide receivers here, will be really, I think, on these guys a little bit between today, tomorrow, and of course into Saturday as they prepare for Sunday. So Mac was the victim of those a little bit. Did make a couple of questionable decisions. Xavier McKinney nearly had an interception on a Mac Jones pass that was intended for Kendrick Bourne. He was picked off by former Patriot, current Giant Logan Ryan. I guess there was an offsides call on the Giants defense that negated that, but ultimately I would probably still give it a credit as an INT. It was really a bad decision by Mac to make the throw, and Logan read it all the way. And to his credit, he did a tremendous job by intercepting the pass that was intended for tight end Jonnu Smith. So Mac, I thought, looked up and down for a little bit, but there were times where he did bounce back. He did have a couple of fourth down conversions in that same drive with all of the drops and the difficulties that he had. He still was able to lead his team into the end zone. A really nice pass in the back of the end zone to Kendrick Bourne, who made a very acrobatic catch. I'm still wondering how he was able to keep his feet intact and be able to get his feet down for the touchdown, and then comes right back, finds Jacoby Myers for the 2-point conversion. So overall, an up and down day for Max, some questionable decisions, but still, I think, a solid day of work for the rookie.
How did it look in the pit? A big question mark. One of the big question marks on the Giants defense is the pass rush versus any offensive line. The Patriots have a pretty good offensive line. How did that matchup play out?
I think it actually matched up very well and very evenly throughout the better part of the day. The Giants' defensive line is definitely stout, and they're capable of getting pressure. I think you saw that a little bit more today than we saw on Wednesday. The quarterbacks, especially Mac, looked a little bit under duress. I think that really contributed to a couple of the poor decisions that Mac made. Cam Newton, obviously, out there again today. He didn't have a large sample size. He completed 6 of 10. Went 4 of 6 in his first 11 on 11s. He was nearly picked off by cornerback James Bradbury on a pass that was intended for Christian Wilkerson. But in a lot of ways, I think Cam maybe was able to handle that a little bit better with his experience. But overall, I think the Giants defense did a better job of keeping the Patriots passers in check, and I think that helped them today. And their defense definitely looked a lot more comfortable and able to make plays.
Hey, Giant fans, it's that time of year again, and all eyes are now turning to football as teams are back on the gridiron for the football season. As always, BetOnline is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this season. Get all the updated odds, props, and contests, including the $500,000 NFL Mega Contest and the $200,000 NFL Survivor Contest, open now at BetOnline. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today to receive your 100% welcome bonus when you use the code LOCKEDON. Be sure to take advantage of their opening day super promo. Make a bet on the Thursday, September 9th season opener between the Super Bowl champion Buccaneers and the Dallas Cowboys. And if you lose, your wager will be refunded up to $25. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports, from football, basketball, boxing, right to horse racing. Don't wait to take advantage of all the great offers for the 2021 season. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. Final question for you, Mike. What are the expectations for Sunday night's game? Has Belichick I guess he hasn't said who he's going to play or and how much and whatnot, but based on your knowledge and past history, what are you anticipating as far as matchups? Is he going to just sit everybody? We're going to see a lot of Mac Jones. We're going to see more Cam Newton since he, missed a couple of days. What are the expectations?
Well, right now, I would say the expectations that the Patriots are going to get some play out of their starters. I know Joe has come out and basically said that we're going to give our starters some play, more than just a few series. They plan on playing their starters a little bit. I think Bill will take a little bit less of an aggressive approach on that. I think he'll probably want to play his starters a little bit, and then you're going to start to see some of them filter out. But ultimately, this is a good opportunity for both sides to be able to see what they can do and how they're going to be able to do it. I look for Cam Newton to probably get the start in this game. I think Mac Jones will definitely accept the ball probably midway through the first quarter, maybe toward the end of the first quarter. I think you're going to see Cam play a few series in this game, not the limited action that we've seen in the first two preseason games. Really got to get an extended look at him, get a little bit more of an extended look at Mac Jones, and then eventually give way to Brian Hoyer. But this is a good opportunity for the starting wide receivers, some of the running backs, and also the starting defense, some of those bubble players that we've talked about in the past, to really make their case, that final case for roster cutdowns that are coming on Tuesday. So all in all, don't look for too much in terms of hand tipping when it comes to the New England Patriots. But if you're looking to see some of their starters, some of their more prolific players, you'll probably see more of them than not on Tuesday night, on Sunday, excuse me.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. And for the Giants, again, it's going to be a dress rehearsal for them. The starters projected to play, I believe, the first half, possibly a series or two into the third quarter. At least that was the plan, according to head coach Joe Judge. Earlier in the week, whether or not that changes, we'll see. Some guys won't play, obviously, because of injuries. I don't expect to see Adoree Jackson, who, thank God, doesn't have a high ankle sprain. It's a low ankle sprain. So they dodged a bullet there, obviously. So going to be a good one. And Mike, listen, this week has been great. I appreciate all the insight. I don't know if you're planning on coming down for Sunday's game, but if you are, certainly, look for me and we'll catch up and sit and chit chat like we always do.
It's been my honor and always been my pleasure to join you here on LockedOn NYG, my friend, and also simulcast on LockedOn Patriots this week. These joint practices can be a very good beginning of a lot of fun that I think can be had season by season, and it looks like they're going to continue for quite a while, hopefully. So that being said, we look forward to Sunday night's game. This should be a good one to close out the 2021 preseason slate.
Definitely. Now, Giant fans, don't go away. I still have more here on the Locked On Giants podcast. We're going to talk about the Ryan Santoso trade. We're going to talk about a couple of other things. So don't go away. Another segment coming up. But on that note, we will say goodbye to good friend Mike Debate, and we will probably see you again, like I said, next year when we do this all over again. So Giant fans, we'll be back right after this. All right, Giant fans, before we call it a show, we have a few housekeeping things we need to discuss. First off, the Giants have traded kicker Ryan Santoso to the Carolina Panthers. They've got a conditional 7th round pick in next year's draft. Now, the condition is that Santoso not only has to make the Panthers roster, he has to be on the roster for at least 2 games. And then the 7th round pick becomes finalized. So the Giants able to find a bidder for Santoso's contract. And Graham Gano, that means he, of course, will be the kicker, which we all knew after Gano signed that big contract during the season towards the end of last year. So Santoso is to Carolina, and Gano will do all the kicking for the Giants in the preseason finale to get himself, geared up for week 1 of the regular season. Couple of other notes that I want to mention real quick. The Denver Broncos, who will face the Giants in week 1 of the regular season, they have named Teddy Bridgewater as their starting quarterback. We have some thoughts on that over at Giants Country. Nick Filato, one of our writers, did a breakdown all I can say about that decision is I kind of wish it was Drew Lock. I think Drew Lock, the Giants might have had a little bit better success with Lock and confusing him and pressuring him and whatnot. So not a favorable decision for the Giants, but certainly something that they can work with and hopefully trick Teddy Bridgewater here and there and get some pressure on him and force him into making some mistakes. But that decision is in the books. That's over at Giant Country. There'll be a link to that in the show description if you want to check that out. And last but not least, we have a special show coming for you this Sunday. It's a special edition of the LockedOn Giants podcast. Nick Filato, who writes for me over at Giants Country, he and I will be on the podcast, and we are going to build the Giants 53-man roster. It should be a fun exercise. We're going to go through each position. We're going to give our 2 cents as to who we think is going to make the roster and why, and who we don't think is going to make the roster and why. So that will be recorded, just as a disclaimer. We're going to do that on Saturday. That show will drop on Sunday before the Giants play the New England Patriots in the preseason finale. So obviously any injuries or whatnot that pop up won't be reflected. But if you check out Giants Country on Monday, I'll have an updated list of projections based on any injuries or anything that comes out of that Patriots game. Also, speaking of the Patriots game, David Turner will be with me next week on Monday, I believe. We will break down the preseason, the final game. The roster decisions that we are anticipating will be made on Tuesday. Now, if you've been listening to David, who has been on with me now for 2 shows, he's had some concerns about the offensive line. We'll see if he still has those concerns. So great insight from David Turner, former NFL scout, used to work for the Giants years ago, knows how to build a roster, personnel stuff, has built rosters with other leagues. Really excited to have him on the show for next Monday. So hope you will check all that out. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Patricia_Traina. I'll have all the observations, notes, and whatnot from the Giants' Friday practice in East Rutherford, and of course the game on Sunday. So until our Sunday show with Nick Filato, our Sunday special, folks, have a great weekend. Thank you as always for tuning in. Everybody have a great weekend. We'll talk again soon.